I never thought the sound of a ringtone could feel like swallowing glass, but when I dialed my parents' number from the ER waiting room, that's exactly what it felt like. Micah was asleep inside, hooked to monitors that beeped every few seconds like a countdown I couldn't pause. The nurse had just handed me a clipboard with surgery estimates on it, $43,000 and change. And I remember laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was so far from anything I had. It felt fictional. I had one name left to call, and as it rang, I whispered to myself, "Don't say no. Just don't say no." My name's Rochelle, I'm 31, and I live on the east side of Atlanta in a one-bedroom apartment with my son, Micah, who's 7 and already too wise for this world. He still sleeps with one arm curled over his chest, like he's protecting it, even in his dreams. That night at the hospital, he reached for me while they pushed the oxygen mask over his face, and I held onto his foot because it was the only part of him I could reach. He couldn't speak, but I could feel what he was trying to say. Don't leave me. We'd made it through the emergency room, barely. They stabilized him, but the cardiologist said it plain. His valve was failing, surgery wasn't optional, and without insurance or some kind of financial intervention, the waitlist at the county hospital might outlive him. I remember staring at the doctor's mouth, watching his words instead of hearing them, because I couldn't afford to understand just yet. I needed 5 minutes where it wasn't real. Just 5. But when I stepped into the hospital hallway, into that smell of antiseptic and vending machine coffee, I knew who I had to call, even if it meant bleeding for it. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 4 years. It wasn't a fight exactly, more like a slow closing of doors. When I told them I was keeping Micah, my mother said, "You're making your bed, Rochelle," and my father walked out of the room without saying a word. They were the kind of people who put scripture over softness, who believed shame built character. Every holiday after that was quieter. Micah had never met them. I had told myself that was safer. But when a surgeon tells you your son's heart is giving out, safe becomes a luxury you can't afford. So I sat outside the hospital that night, in the cold, my phone in one hand and the weight of every wrong decision in the other. I called their landline, the one I still remembered from childhood, and when my father answered, I froze. For a second, I felt 10 years old again, waiting for permission to speak. Then I just said it. "Daddy, it's me. It's Rochelle. I need help. It's Micah. My son. He's sick and the surgery, but I didn't finish, because he cut me off, sharp like glass. So you came into our lives just to beg, huh?" I didn't know how to answer that. There wasn't a right thing to say. All I could manage was, "Daddy, it's his life," and then I heard my mother in the background say, "This is what happens when you stray too far from covering." Covering. Like this was punishment. Like a child's failing heart was some kind of spiritual consequence. I remember feeling heat crawl up my throat, not anger yet, just shame. Deep, tired shame. The kind that makes you wish you were invisible. But I held the phone and said again, "Quieter, please." There was silence, and then the click. That silence held more than words ever could. I didn't cry. I just sat on that concrete bench until the cold settled into my bones. And then I got up, walked back into the hospital, and asked the billing department if they had any payment plans for uninsured parents. The woman behind the glass looked up at me, eyes kind, and handed me a form I couldn't read through the blur in my eyes. "Try CarePlus," she said. "They sometimes sponsor pediatric cases." I nodded, thanked her, and told myself I'd try every door before I let Micah slip through this one. In the days that followed, I sold my car. I cleaned houses I wouldn't even walk into before. I told Micah it was a sleepover when they admitted him for observation, and I made sure he never saw me count quarters in the vending machine line. Every night I'd sit by his bed, rubbing his feet, humming off-key lullabies. He asked me once, "Mama, are you scared?" I smiled like it was a game and told him, "We're brave together." And we were. But deep down, the fear sat in my chest like a stone. And I still heard my father's voice, "You came just to beg." I wasn't even looking for it, just scrolling through stories on my cousin Kiara's page while waiting for Micah's meds, and there it was, like it had been waiting for me. My sister Jada, dressed head to toe in white, walking through a balloon arch that spelled out level 25. My mama stood next to the cake, laughing. My daddy had his phone out, recording her like she was a star. There was a violinist in the corner, rose petals on the ground, champagne flutes passed like water. I stared so long I forgot to blink, forgot to breathe. They said I was too much, too needy, too loud, but there they were, in custom outfits, under gold lights, feeding each other cake like it was a wedding. The caption read, "She's the daughter every parent prays for." And I sat there on a plastic chair with a sleeping child in my lap and an $4 in his hand. I didn't even have enough money to buy gas home. I'd been eating saltines from the nurse's lounge for 2 days straight, and still, I hadn't cried. But something in me cracked right then, slow and quiet. Kiara sent a message an hour later, like she hadn't just broadcast my family's celebration to the whole world. "Hope Micah's feeling better. We missed you tonight." I didn't answer. I just put my phone face down on the tray table and looked at my son's hands, small, still, curled slightly inward like he was holding something in his sleep. He didn't know we weren't invited. Didn't know the same people who told me they couldn't help were popping bottles on the rooftop of the W Hotel. That kind of peace is only possible in children and liars. The next morning, one of the interns who'd seen me in the hallway asked if I had family nearby. I said, "Not close." He offered me a coffee, said, "My mom used to work 2 jobs too," and handed me the cup with both hands like it was something sacred. I drank it so slowly you'd think it was gold, and when I finished, I finally checked my phone again. Dozens of tags. Hashtag Jada's Day, hashtag family over everything, hashtag blessed and spoiled. One photo had my parents with their arms around her, my mom holding a Chanel shopping bag, my dad beaming. That was the day I stopped explaining myself. I stopped asking why they couldn't love me soft or hold space for the kind of daughter I became. I started selling off things I swore I'd never part with. I called a woman from church who ran a small fund for single mothers and asked if she could talk to someone at Grady's finance desk. I got up every morning with sleep still crusted in my eyes and scrubbed baseboards until my knees bruised. Because if my family wouldn't stand beside Micah's bed, I would. Jada didn't call. Mama didn't check in. Daddy, who used to braid my hair every Sunday night before school, didn't send a text. The silence stretched wide and sharp, like they were waiting for me to apologize for making them uncomfortable. And the worst part? I almost did. I almost called just to say, "It's okay," like I'd made a mess by needing them. But then Micah whispered in his sleep, "Mama, I love you," and I realized they could keep their lights, their flowers, their filters. What I had in that moment was real, and it was enough. One night, the nurse told me he was going to make it. "He's tough," she said, adjusting his blanket. "You did good." And I smiled, because even though we hadn't won, we hadn't lost either. That same night, I saw another post, my father, giving a toast. He raised his glass and said, "Family is where blessings begin." I don't know if they ever noticed I saw it. I don't know if they cared. But it lodged something deep inside me, something I didn't name. I just turned off my phone, curled beside Micah, and let the machines hum him back to sleep. Sometimes grief doesn't look like sobbing on the floor. Sometimes it looks like nodding politely at a doctor while wondering how your own blood could forget you exist. Sometimes it's scrolling past photos of people wearing outfits you remember folding when you were 12, while your hands are cracked from bleach and soap. I never said a word to them about that night. I didn't bring it up. I just filed it away like all the other disappointments, like all the times I tried to make myself smaller so I could fit into their version of love and failed. Micah had been home for 3 weeks, thinner than before, sleeping more, asking fewer questions. We were settling into a quiet routine, morning cartoons, soft food, late bills. I was folding laundry in the living room when my phone lit up with a call from my sister, her name the last one I expected to see. I let it ring once, twice, but something told me to pick up, something sharp and uneasy. Her voice came fast, breathy, like she'd been crying. "Rochelle, hey, listen." I didn't know who else to call. "Something happened with Daddy's business." I sat down without meaning to. She said the words like they'd tripped over her tongue. He got scammed," she whispered. "They used the house as collateral for some investment, and now the bank's threatening to repossess." I didn't say anything, just listened to her explain how the money had vanished, how the lawyer said they had maybe a month. "Mama's been crying for 2 days," she added. "Daddy, He's not saying much, but I know he's scared. The silence between us stretched too wide. Then she said it. We were hoping you could help. I had to close my eyes for that part. You were hoping I could what? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated, then repeated it like I hadn't heard her the first time. Help. Maybe co-sign something? Or just talk to someone at the credit union. I know you used to do taxes for that woman there, right? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling like the words would settle differently if I didn't look at anything. Jada, I said slowly, do you remember what Daddy said when I asked for help with Micah's surgery? There was silence, then a breath. That was different, she said. I didn't raise my voice, didn't shift my tone, just said it again. Do you remember? She whispered it this time, he said. You came into our lives just to beg. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and said, and now here you are, doing exactly that. She tried to backpedal, said, it's not like that, said, I didn't know how bad it was, said, it's not about choosing sides, but I wasn't angry, not anymore, I was just tired. I hope he gets through it, I told her, I really do. But I have nothing left to give. That night, Mama called too. Her voice didn't carry the usual sharpness, it was smaller, softer, the kind of voice you use when you know you broke something and you're hoping it's still fixable. Rochelle, she said, I know we haven't been close. I didn't say anything. Your father's ashamed, that's why he hasn't called you directly. But we're in a bind. I waited. She said they were 2 months behind on the mortgage, that the utilities were in my sister's name now, that it was starting to feel like the ground was shifting under them. You have a stable job now, right? I asked her, did y'all even pray for Micah when he was in surgery? She went quiet, then said, we prayed for you both, always, but something about the way she said it made me think she was lying. You said I made my bed, I reminded her you said I brought shame. She started crying after that, real crying, the kind that makes you feel like a villain even when you know you didn't start the fire. I held the phone away from my face, just far enough to keep her sadness from crawling into my chest and staying there. When she finally stopped, she asked, so you really won't help us? And I said, Mama, I already did. I survived. I kept going after you left me outside. I held my son's hand through pain you can't imagine, and I didn't let it turn me bitter. She sighed like that was heavier than anything else I could have said. You always were stubborn, she whispered. I almost said you taught me, but I didn't. I just said goodbye, pressed the red button, and watched the call log fade. Then I walked into Micah's room and kissed his forehead twice. The next day I saw Jada's post, vague, emotional, something about storms and seasons, about trusting God even when it hurts. Comments poured in, people praying, people asking what was wrong. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I just closed the app, picked up the laundry basket, and kept moving. Sometimes people only find your number when they're underwater, when the ship is halfway sunk, and they remember you were good at swimming. But by then, you've already built your raft. And you know better than to throw yourself back into waves you barely survived the first time. It was Aunt Tish they sent, like she was neutral, like she hadn't been the one who told me years ago that a girl like me needed to lower her expectations. She showed up with a box of donuts, the kind she used to bring to Sunday school, and called it a visit. I let her in, offered water, nothing more. Micah was at school, the place was clean, and I made sure she saw the photo on the wall, him in his hospital gown, holding my hand, smiling like he hadn't just been cracked open and stitched back together. She started slow, asking about my job, complimenting the curtains, saying I'd done well for myself. I didn't answer right away, just let her circle the room with her eyes, looking for weakness. Then she got to it. Your mama's not herself lately, she said, and your daddy. He walks like the world got heavier. I nodded. They said they don't recognize themselves, she added, as if guilt was a reason to rearrange history. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. They said they didn't recognize me either, I said, when I needed them. She looked down like that hurt her. I know they messed up, she said, quiet, but you're the only one doing okay right now. I laughed once, short and dry. Doing okay, I repeated. Because I'm breathing? Because my lights are on. She didn't answer. I walked to the drawer by the fridge and pulled out the manila envelope I hadn't touched in weeks. I slid it across the table. Inside were copies of Micah's bills, the surgery approval letter, my work schedule from that month, and a photo of me sleeping in the ER chair, hoodie up, shoes off, arms around his stuffed bear. She took her time flipping through it. Didn't say anything until she got to the last page, the receipt from the loan I took out with 19% interest. Lord, she said, her voice thin. You did all this alone? I nodded. Because I had to, I said. Because nobody came when I called. She closed the folder slowly, hands shaking a little. They didn't know how to respond, she offered. It scared them. I sat down, facing her. Scared people still pick up the phone, I said. They don't scroll past your name and go light candles for your silence. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, maybe explain, maybe reframe, but I wasn't interested in translation. Tell them I'm not angry, I said. I'm just finished. She winced a little, like I'd cursed. Rochelle, she said, family ain't something you just quit. I shrugged. They quit me first. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. She didn't argue, just nodded slowly, folded her hands in her lap, and asked if she could hug me before she left. I stood still for a second, then stepped forward and let her. Her perfume smelled like Sundays I didn't miss anymore. Later that night, Micah asked why Aunt Tish came over, and I told him the truth. She wanted to say your grandparents are sorry, I said. And are they? He asked, still coloring his paper. I thought for a moment, then said, I think they are, in their own way. He nodded like that made sense. Then he looked up and said, Did you forgive them? I smiled, touched his cheek, and said, I forgave them the day you came out of surgery and squeezed my hand. Everything else after that, it's just noise. He went back to coloring, quiet and calm. That weekend, I saw Jada post a throwback, her at the rooftop party, captioned, Where Love Lives. Mama liked it. Daddy commented a heart. People tagged each other and wrote things like, Wish I was there. I didn't say anything. I just took Micah to the library, watched him build a spaceship out of Legos, listened to him ask a stranger if Pluto was still a planet. The world had kept moving, and I had learned to move with it, even when the people behind me tried to pull me back into a story I never agreed to be written into. By Sunday, Aunt Tish called again to check in, but I let it ring. The voicemail said, Just wanted to say they're thinking of you, even if they don't always show it right. I put the phone down, walked to the kitchen, and started meal prepping for the week. My hands moved through the rhythm of it, chop, season, stir, seal, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I felt something lift. Not forgiveness exactly, and not closure either, just air. Space. Something new forming in the silence. I didn't call back. I just made dinner. And it was enough. 3 weeks passed before I heard from them again, not a call this time, just a text from Mama that said, Micah looks strong in that last picture. He's growing so fast. I stared at it for a minute, then another, wondering what kind of courage it takes to reach out like that after silence. I didn't reply right away, just looked out the window at Micah playing with the neighbor's dog, his laugh carrying all the way to the kitchen. He was getting better, stronger, asking less about why his grandparents hadn't come. That silence had started to fade. That evening, I sent a photo, Micah at the park, arms spread wide like wings, one of his shoes untied, smiling like the sky belonged to him. I didn't write a caption, didn't add a heart or prayer hands or explanation. Just the image. 15 minutes later, she replied, He's beautiful. You did good. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Some things are better left suspended in air, like smoke or apology. I made dinner, tucked Micah in, and sat with the quiet. It felt clean for the first time, like something I could live with. A few days later, Jada called, not from her phone but from a work line, like she wasn't sure I'd pick up otherwise. Her voice came slow, careful. I just wanted to say, I get it now. I didn't interrupt. All those nights I thought you were dramatic or stubborn or just mad, you were surviving. I let the silence sit between us like a bull we were both afraid to touch. Daddy's still trying to fix things with the bank, she added, but I told him it wasn't just about the money. I said, it never was, and she exhaled. He's not well, she added, softer now. He doesn't sleep, keeps checking the windows at night like someone's coming to take everything. Mama won't say it, but she's scared. I swallowed that slowly. Tell her, I said, scared don't excuse silence. She's still got time to speak right. Jada didn't fight that. She just said, I'm sorry for what I didn't see. I believed her. Not because she said it well, but because she didn't rush to fix it. We hung up quietly, no promises, just the kind of pause that means maybe one day, the door won't feel so heavy. That Sunday, Micah brought home a drawing from Sunday school, 3 stick figures holding hands. He pointed to the middle one. That's me, he said. And that's you, and that's Grandma. I asked, why isn't Grandpa there? He thought for a second, then said, he's inside the house. He's still learning how to be nice. I smiled, kissed the top of his head, and said, that's okay, baby. Some people take longer to learn. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he ran off to build a fort with couch cushions, and I just stood there, holding his picture like scripture. A week later, a card arrived. It wasn't fancy, just a simple white envelope with Mama's handwriting on the front. Inside, a photo of her and Daddy, younger, smiling on a porch I barely remembered. Tucked inside was a note, 2 sentences long. We didn't raise you perfect, but you raised someone beautiful. We're proud of you even if we couldn't say it then. I held it in my lap for a long time, didn't cry, didn't speak. Some words arrived too late to fix what broke, but just early enough to plant something new. I tucked it in Micah's scrapbook. I never told anyone what those years really cost me, what it took to carry all that weight without folding, without bitterness settling in my bones. But I carried it anyway, because some people never say thank you, never say sorry, never show up unless life makes them. And even then, it's more about saving face than fixing damage. But I learned how to stop asking for things that shouldn't have to be begged for. I built something out of the absence, and it held. It wasn't justice. It wasn't revenge. It was something softer. Something like peace. By the time Christmas came, we'd hung our lights early. Micah helped me tape snowflakes to the window, and I didn't check my phone once that day. We made cocoa with too many marshmallows, watched old cartoons until we both fell asleep. When I woke up, I saw the tree glowing in the corner, soft and quiet, and I realized I didn't miss anyone. I didn't need a call to feel full. The house was small, but the warmth was wide. I kissed Micah's cheek, pulled the blanket up to his chin, and whispered, we're okay. And we were.